And hello, good morning. This is Live from the Heartland, and my name's Katie Hogan, and I am so glad to have the show right here on the stage at the Heartland Cafe with our brand new ISBN line, or whatever the heck it is. It's been months since I've had a show here, so I'm thrilled to be back, smelling the bacon, turkey bacon, of course, and seeing people with their kids and everybody having breakfast and the sun shining in. And I'm so glad everybody came out and didn't believe the weatherman telling them it's too cold to come out. Something that is, sort of murdering small businesses all over the country. Okay, but we'll get on to the Live from the Heartland show today. Includes some wonderful guests. We have Dennis Cunningham, a lawyer, longtime activist, who is handling a lawsuit charging Cheney Rumsfeld with 9/11 complicity. So listen up for that at the second half of the show. We have a neighbor and artist friend, true neighbor of the Heartland, Al Tyler, who's a longtime Rogers Parker and a tremendous artist, who's got an opening next week, and we're going to just make an announcement with Al about that. We're going to start things off, though, with Danielle Wegman. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you.
Danielle is the public policy coordinator of the Chicago Religious Leadership Network on Latin America. Wow.
It's a long name.
It is. Now, this is a national coalition group?
No, we are a regional group that works out of Chicago, and we do most of our mobilizing here in Chicago and throughout Illinois, really. And we partner with groups nationally to work on U.S. policy toward Latin America.
All right. And you have been working with them for how long?
Almost 3 years now.
And have you always been doing the Latin American beat, as it were?
More or less, since college.
Okay. What I read in preparation for this is you've got a couple things going on. One is to try to affect public policy on Colombia, U.S. policy vis-a-vis Colombia, which is, other than outside of our aid to the Middle East, is the biggest recipient of U.S. foreign aid right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I remember when El Salvador was the biggest recipient of U.S. aid. Under the Reagan era, it's not generally a good news thing, is it?
No, not generally.
So talk to us about Colombia, and then we'll go on to the meeting, the conference in March a little bit later. So tell us what you are putting together on this briefing book and about Colombia and our policy towards it.
Well, really, this is the first time in at least 8 years that we actually feel like we have a chance to make real changes to U.S. policy toward Colombia. The last 8 years have seen a program that's called Plan Colombia. It's about 80% military aid, $500 million per year. Total U.S. aid in the last 8 years have been something like $6 billion to Colombia. So it really is the highest recipient of U.S. foreign aid in our hemisphere. The whole idea behind it was to reduce coca cultivation that makes cocaine and that comes to the United States. But ironically, that coca production has risen since Plan Colombia began. So
very effective, huh?
Really effective.
Uh-huh. So why were they trying to lower coca cultivation, given that, the U.S. is the biggest user of cocaine in the hemisphere? What did that have to do with our position on the situation of people getting knocked off in Colombia?
People getting knocked off, like human rights defenders getting assassinated, extrajudicial executions.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear about.
Sure. What it has a lot to do with is coca crops grow like a weed in Colombia.
And Peru.
And Peru, yeah. But Colombia happens to be the largest producer of coca. So it's all in the name of the war on drugs. So what happens is coca is really the easiest and most lucrative crop to grow. So people don't have alternatives, like small farmers in the countryside. If they don't have alternatives to grow actual crops like yucca or potatoes or rice, they're going to turn to coca. That often results in targeting by the military or by paramilitaries, or even by guerrillas, and displacement of those people off of their lands. So
now, you say it's targeted by all of those different groups, including groups that are fighting each other, like guerrillas and the military. So are they targeting the growers for the same reason, or are they trying to win them over, or are they just, coming in and barreling through the fields? What's the action, and where is the conflict right now in Colombia, the biggest conflict?
The conflict in Colombia is always sort of moving, and it's actually sort of moves in part with coca crops. Now what's becoming larger is palm oil production, which we are using here for biofuels. So it's a moving conflict depending on where the crops are, and a whole variety of other issues. So really it's kind of a conflict between paramilitaries and guerrilla for control over narco trafficking. I mean, this is just one example of a really complicated and complex conflict. So,
what does one read to find out about what is really going on in Colombia? Is there any good book right now that someone has laid all this out?
I guess for the most up-to-date information, I would just refer people to certain organizations and their websites. They do the best research. Center for International Policy does excellent research on Colombia, how Plan Colombia is impacting actual people and communities on the ground in Colombia. Washington Office on Latin America does excellent research. Latin America Working Group. All these groups are based out of Washington, have great websites and good research.
Okay. Have you been to Colombia?
Yes, 3 times.
Uh-huh. And what strikes you the most when you go there to do your research or meet with people that are your colleagues there?
For me, what strikes me is the resilience of the people. Right now, in Colombia, what used to be rampant were massacres, for example, as a form of violence. Now, that's not so much the violence that is perpetrated against people. It's more targeted assassinations and threats against religious leaders who are speaking out against the military, the paramilitary, the guerrillas. Targeted assassinations against union leaders who are protesting the free trade agreement with Colombia or calling for their rights as workers. Human rights defenders who are organizing in their communities to protect their crops and to protect their lands, really, from large multinationals coming in, doing open pit mining, planting palm oil plantations. So these are the people that are getting targeted primarily.
So I remember doing a show with a couple of people about Colombia, maybe 5 years ago. This has a different tone to it. It seems to me like what you're describing is a down the road a piece development, maybe as a result of NAFTA. Do you think that's the case? Are we talking more about free trade and union workers under attack because of NAFTA policies, or maybe not?
Well, NAFTA is an agreement with Canada, the United States, and Mexico.
Oh, right.
So under President Bush, there have been, in the last, 20 years or so, there have been 17 bilateral free trade agreements. 14 of those have been signed under President Bush. One of those is NAFTA. The one that's currently pending with Colombia is the U.S.-Colombia Free Trade Agreement. It's on the rocks right now. Congress has not approved it because of the violence against trade unionists.
Mm-hmm. So why does Congress keep giving Colombia a lot of our money? How does that happen?
Every year there's a vote on the foreign appropriations bill that allocates a certain amount of funding for each country. President Bush, over the last 8 years, has been good friends with the president of Colombia, President Alvaro Uribe.
Uribe?
Uribe.
Yeah.
Yes. So, really, it's in the name of a continued war on drugs